Some economic metrics to understand and be familiar with. We've got the marginal propensity to consume. Gosh, I love consuming. Give me some nachos, please. The consumer price index, the gross domestic product, and formula for GDP is right here. Let's start off with the MPC, the marginal propensity to consume. Well, generally, this is how many tacos you can consume in 1 hour, but for our economic metrics, we are going to call it the proportion of aggregate raise in pay. So, okay, let's dissect every part of what I'm saying here. The proportion, so let's say we have a 10% pay raise, great for us, that a consumer spends on the consumption of goods and services. So, yes, you get a 10% raise, but the marginal propensity to consume isn't that 10%. It's the percentage of this 10% that you go and spend on goods and services as opposed to saving it. So if, let's put it in dollar terms as well. Let's say you get $1,000 raise. If you get $1,000 raise and you spend $1,000 on a bunch of goods and services, you go out and blow all that money on a new something, I don't know, it costs $1,000 in a new TV, then the marginal propensity to consume, I mean, for you, obviously this is the economy as a whole and everyone together, but at least the marginal propensity to consume for just you would be 100%. Now, if you put all of this money in the bank and you're more responsible with it, good for you, then the marginal propensity to consume would be zero here for you. And again, this is everyone as a whole, so it's not going to be as clear cut as just one person. And while it does vary by income level, it is typically lower at a higher income. So think about that. How do you generally have more money? Well, you save more money and you grow it, you invest it. So yes, generally the wealthier, the higher income individuals will have a lower marginal propensity to consume. I mean, also think about it. You're making more money. I mean, if you just maintain your constant standard of living, like let's say you're used to paying $1,000 in rent, to some of you that might seem appalling. To some of you that might seem just. I totally understand. I've lived in both the absolute expensive parts of the world and the just cheapest you can imagine. So I'm just gonna use $1,000. It might completely blow some of your minds. Be like, there's no way rent can be that cheap. So yeah, $1,000 and right. If you just keep that for the rest of your life, I mean, or let's say the next 10 years, but you're constantly getting 10% increases in bonuses or raises, then yeah, like your marginal propensity to consume will, keep going down. You're going to keep maintaining your standard of living. Maybe you only spend $100 on groceries a week or whatever it may be. You just maintain that standard of living. And that's generally how you get wealthier. And that's generally how you are going to increase your amount of savings and decrease the MPC. Next is the consumer price index. This is inflation. It's inflation. It's the prices. It's an index, like a metric of the prices that consumers pay. What is it specifically in our definition? It's a measure of the average change over time. So percent change formula. We'll see examples of all these in formulas. Paid by urban consumers. And why do we use urban consumers? Well, it's a lot easier to track the information and data in a large city or metropolitan area than it is farmers or just people spread out over a long period, a long large space. So yeah, that's why we use urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. And what does this mean? Well, maybe we weight the inflation 10% or 20% by gas because people spend 20% of their money on gas. And like we try to weight the CPI based on what the average consumer spends their money on. So let's say the average consumer spends 30% of their money on rent. In our CPI, we're going to weight, think of like weighted average, we're going to weight the inflation increase of rent by 30%. And if they spent 20% of their income on gas, 20% of the basket will be gas. And then let's say 15% on food, 15% of the basket will be food. So let's say, I mean, I don't really know what it is, but let's say 5% of your income is spent on electronics, 5% of the inflation that goes into this will be electronics. So let's say electronics increase by 100%, they just double in how much they cost, but everything else stays stagnant. Well, that's not going to have as much of an impact on the CPI because electronics only constitute 5% of the CPI. And yeah, CPI, I mean, it could be the overall basket. It could also measure select industries. So you could have CPI for just automobiles or just products such as services, fuel, food items, anything like that. The GDP or gross domestic product is a monetary measure of the market value of all final goods and services produced in a specific time period by countries. So, what is produced in a country? Well, there's government spending, there's investment by private industry. This is buying up. I mean, this is government spending, could be like, absolutely anything. Investment by private industry. I mean, this is going to be, gosh, I mean, buying factories, buying goods, buying inventory. Consumer spending. I mean, read that as you will. It's what you would spend. And then exports net of imports. So what we produce to the world minus what we take in from the world. So if you have positive net exports, that means you're producing more to the world than you're taking in. And you have negative net exports, that means you are bringing in more than you produce. And think about it, if you're a small island nation, you're probably bringing in a lot more than you are exporting. And is that a bad thing? I mean, not necessarily. If you just don't have the land for it, then it is what it is. That's just the geographic barrier you have to deal with. And there's plenty of island nations that do well for themselves. There are two approaches to calculate GDP. This is the expenditure approach. There's also the income approach. Really just not worth their time. Not worth their time. This is the much more common approach. And the odds of seeing something on the income approach, I would put somewhere of the 0.001%. Let's start to see these formulas and play how they play out.
Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.